Hello, thank you for joining us today. My name is Anastasia. I'm part of the marketing team at ComputerTalk. And today I'm joined by Mike Kraybill, US Sales Executive. And today we'll be uncovering some of the challenges that utilities are facing and some of the steps to overcome them. So, Mike, I understand that utilities are facing a variety of challenges, especially when it comes to unexpected outages. What are some of the biggest obstacles you think that utilities are dealing with?
Yeah, I think you hit the first one right on the head. So, probably the most business impacting and day-to-day impacting would be unexpected or unplanned outages. Now, this could be either in the form of, a natural accident that causes some sort of an issue and a service interruption. Could be human error. It could be uncontrollable events. But I think the big key is understanding how to be proactive about the messaging. Trying to take advantage of letting folks know before an issue happens, as opposed to trying to be reactive, and notify folks after that issue or that outage has already occurred. So, the biggest challenge is understanding the best ways to communicate with the subscriber base or a membership. If that's through a SMS message from the contact center to let them know that, we have a severe weather outlook today. It's a holiday. We expect higher usage. We could have temporary service disruptions. Things like that, I think, can really help to alleviate an issue before it happens. Otherwise, if you do find yourself in the position where you're being reactive, then having the right strategy to communicate to folks to let them know that we understand there's a service interruption, providing like an estimated amount of time where that interruption is going to occur for. If you can't be proactive, which would be ideal, I think the biggest challenge is understanding the best way to be reactive and to try to keep your membership and your customer base as happy as possible, despite the fact you might have an unplanned service interruption.
Right. So how can utility providers overcome those obstacles?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you have to start to weigh what is the impact of us maybe not being proactive with that messaging. Do we have to look at the negative impact it could cause? Things like word of mouth can spread pretty quickly. I know that the area that I live at, we do get proactive notifications when we have things like severe weather days or, for holidays, we expect to see more usage. But not all folks have that luxury. Some folks might find themselves working alongside maybe a smaller provider in a bit of a competitive market. And, losing a customer is a potential. It's a little bit different than maybe the more larger kind of like regional utility providers where they don't really have so much of a concern about losing, a subscriber because they kind of have a monopoly. But in those smaller, more challenging markets, I think they do everything they can to try to retain those customers. So again, what can you do to overcome it? You want to be as proactive as you possibly can. Set up a plan and a communication strategy to be proactive. If you have incidents happen where you can't be proactive, then again, do your best. Try to make sure that you have the right amount of folks staffed. Make sure you can get those messages out. Make sure that your subscriber base understands what's happening and why.
Awesome. That's great. So quick question on that note. What would the difference between a smaller versus a larger provider be with these challenges?
Yeah, I know I kind of hinted at it, and it's something I think we have to think about. So there are really different types of providers. You might have what we call cooperatives, and they're in a little bit more of a competitive market. Many times, co-ops have multiple co-ops in their area. So keeping their subscribers and their members can be a challenge because they do have another option they could go to get that utility provided. Now, if you're talking about those regional, larger utility providers, again, their impact, they're not really at a risk of losing a subscriber or a member, but it's that word of mouth, right? It's the negative press that sometimes makes it onto the news, for example. So both have impacts. I would say that just from a financial standpoint, the impact on a smaller, maybe like a cooperative type of utility provider, is probably larger felt than the same type of issue to a more regional or larger provider. But either way, nobody wants to have any kind of a negative impact, any kind of negative press. So both have to do their best to manage through those types of difficult situations when they happen.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. So you mentioned earlier that the best strategy is for these organizations to be more proactive than reactive. Do you have any
Yes.
examples of some of the strategies that they can leverage?
Yeah, I certainly do. And I will have to speak to what we do because I think that plays a big part in making sure we can help with those practice strategies. So, I myself work with a couple of different utility providers that leverage things like outbound notifications. So typically what we'll see is some sort of an integration between a contact center platform and a customer database. Utilities world, that could be something like a CRM. They may even have an integration to like an outage management system. But the big thing is leveraging the communication tools within a contact center platform to send outbound notifications to a large grouping or mass of people. Now, a lot of times that'll be like an SMS message out to your subscribers to let them know that, hey, there's unpredictable weather coming this weekend. We're going to have a holiday with higher usage. When you need to let them know that there's a potential for an outage, typically it's done through an SMS message, maybe an email, or maybe an outbound automated phone call through like an IVR. Now, options do tend to change a little bit when we go towards more of the reactive side of things. So you can still use your outbound messaging, but when we're outbound messaging in a reactive sense, it's more of recovery mode. So in those days, we're trying to send our messaging before we get the influx of calls, right? Before we get that large volume of people asking what's going on. So there's really a couple different ways to try to circumvent that. Again, to me, the best strategy is to have an outbound communication strategy in place to make sure that when these issues do happen, or when the potential for a service interruption happens, that we can communicate that out to our base before they have to communicate to us that it's happened. So again, a lot of different things you can do. Yes, the contact center technology can really help there, but also just understanding how many folks do we need to have on staff if we do have an outage? What is our expected call volume going to look like? Making sure that you're fully staffed and you have the communication modalities that you need are really the best way to handle both those proactive situations and when you need to be reactive to an issue as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike. This has been really great, very helpful. You provided great insight into, some of the challenges that utilities are facing and some of the steps that they can take to overcome them.
For sure. Yeah. And Anastasia, I thank you for your time. And I will say there's a lot more detail you can get into here. It's a very robust conversation, and it's one that constantly changes. So if anyone else finds themselves in a similar situation and would like to consult with us to understand how we can help, we're always happy to take that phone call.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Anastasia.